Welcome to the Dr. Dad's podcast, where a naturopath and chiropractor come together each week to share lifestyle medicine, health advice, and inspiring interviews with some of the top experts in health and wellness, bringing you the latest in nutrition, exercise, ancient healing, toxins and detox, your microbiome, mindset, hormones, brain, and much more. Stay tuned. We're going to teach you how to experience growth daily. Hey everybody, this is Dr. David Awardy coming at you, and I'm with Dr. Nick Jensen. Happy New Year, buddy.
It's funny we're saying Happy New Year. January's almost done.
We're a little late.
Happy New Year to you too.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, so we're getting our 2024 started, and we have an amazing guest today. We have Dr. Brett Brimhall on with us today. So real quick, before I bring Brett on, I'm going to give a quick bio about him. So Brett is married to Holly, and they've been married since 1996, and they have 4 wonderful children. I think I've met some of your kids, Brett. They live in Arizona, where he's been in a chiropractic practice since 2001. Dr. Brimhall trains hundreds of healthcare providers all over the world since 1995. A system of wellness care he and his father have pioneered called the 6 Steps to Wellness. As part of that system, he trains on nutritional supplements, chiropractic tools and techniques, and integrated functional healthcare. In 2014, he had a paradigm shift when he saw changes in a patient that he had worked with over a year with a breakthrough technology known as Nutrigenomic activation. He is a member of the Science Advisory Board with a public traded company and shares on nutrition and gene expression across the world. I have known Brett, buddy. I was thinking this past weekend, I think it's been like 14 years since.
I remember. I was actually trying to think about that because I don't remember exactly when that was. It's been at least that, it feels like.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So, I've known Brett and his dad for a very long time. They've been a big part of my learning and my growing and the wisdom that I have found as a doctor. I'm very grateful and blessed to have you both in my life. I can't thank you guys enough. I look at where I'm at in practice now, man, and then I think about like my early beginnings, right? And I'm like, man, just from there to here and to still, be very close with you and your dad and I'm still learning from you guys. It's just a beautiful thing, man. So Brett, thanks for joining us today, man. I've been really wanting to get you on the podcast with us.
No, I appreciate it. It's just so fun to see. Like, I always enjoy having you and your wife, and even with the story of you throwing coffee on her. There's a story about that you can hear later. Hey, you said it's open season, right?
Right, that's true.
I think one of my favorite things is seeing the people that basically I grew up with in my professional career, and so just seeing you guys and then watching how we've all progressed and learned from each other. It's a lot of fun, and I always like to check in with you on your son, how he's doing, and how big he's getting. So, and not only professionally but personally, it's been a joy to know you. So, looking forward to this.
Yeah, man. So, buddy, let's get at it because we have a lot to talk about today. So, for our listeners, we've dove into this extracellular matrix quite a bit, and I really want to hone in on that. But we're going to talk to Dr. Brimhall today a lot about a product that I came across on as I was kind of just scrolling through his pages one day, and I was seeing these amazing results that he was having with some of his clients, and so I called him. I was like, Brett, what's going on, man? Like, what is this stuff? What are you using? And so at the same time, I had been doing a lot of research on the cellular matrix, and it was interesting that, the universe kind of works in mysterious ways. It's kind of like it fell in my lap when it needed to. So Brett was using a liquid collagen. And so we got to talking, and he kind of gave me the gist about it. Now, I'm going to let him kind of take the reins right now, but like as practitioners, you told me this, man, is like, we all know that the collagen that we've been using, this stuff that's more raw material, we know people need it, right? We know they need them as building blocks, but I think you would agree with me, and most of our listeners probably would, is like, we don't see a lot of big results with it when we put people on it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it was like Dr. Josh Axe last year, the year before, was just really pounding the collagen, man. And like, I'm talking, there had to have been billions of dollars of people buying collagen. And I honestly don't think it really did much for people. And so it's interesting. You told me about this liquid stuff. So then I had an ear for you, man. I was like, so tell me about this stuff. So I'm going to give you the reins, brother. Let's talk a little bit about this Truscience Liquid Collagen, why it's different, what it's doing, why we're seeing these crazy results. And I would like to give my little testimonials from my patients so far, because I have a lot. But yeah, like tell us about it, man.
For sure. And it's actually kind of fun. It's just funny how things fall together, because I was like you, like I studied collagen on and off, and when the company I'm part of like told me about their, to bring up this collagen, I was like, no, because I'm like, I know it's important, like in this, it's so important part of like just the cellular matrix, like for our body to like even form itself and not be a big blob that's just the cell itself. It has to have collagen. And that's what allows like energy transfer, the water holding. There's so much to do with collagen, and it's like 35% of our protein structure is collagen. So like I knew it was important, but like I'd have people take it, and I'm like, just didn't get any results. My wife was buying this bucket of collagen from Costco for years, because what we're told it's good for skin, hair, and nails, and like I don't really think about that stuff that way, but I wasn't very excited to say the least when they talked about announcing this, even though I knew the way we formulated in the science was important. And so I kind of went in as skeptical. And so I'm being part of the science advisory board with this company. A handful has got product early. And so I'm like, well, let's just see. And so I took it, but I gave it to my wife and a few others that I knew they were kind of, there's some things I was seeing that just weren't changing the way that I wanted them to. And one of my good friends, her husband passed away, just without notice. And I've known her for a number of years, and she had two boys, went to just obviously severe depression. She was doing all this therapy and like nutrition and like counseling and all this stuff to try to like work through that, because she had two boys. She still got like two teenage boys. She got to help, get back on the game. And I watched her struggle for probably, man, about 8 months when this stuff came out. And she's like, and she was part of that group that got to take it early. And I'm like, whatever. Like, she's just like, we're supposed to take pictures of our skin, right? And I'm just like, that's not me.
Yeah.
Your skin, your hair, whatever, eyebrows, and I was working with her all through this process, and she comes in about 8 days in, and we have this conversation. She's like, I'm having this depression lift. And I'm like, the only thing different you're doing the college didn't make sense. Like, just logically didn't make sense to me. And then we only got a sample size, so she was running out. And she was super nervous because she hadn't felt like alive like in 8 months. And she's like, I don't know what it is, because it'd been like a month previous. I've watched her like almost pass out trying to share with others what she was doing. And because she was just so fatigued all the time. And I seen her like come back alive. I'm like, man, I don't get it. And so I actually gave what I had left over to her. And at the same time, my wife's had this plantar fasciitis going on, do a ton of good work. It can be on and off, and she wouldn't be able to exercise like she used to. And like less than a week in, like she was like not hurting. And I don't know if you guys with your wife, if they're like sometimes a little leery about taking stuff you want them to take. Right? And like with this, like she's like, she was nervous she was running out because she felt so good. This is probably the only product I've ever had her take that she's like, she will not miss. Like, she'll travel with it. She won't miss it. And so I started like doing some research on the collagen and said, okay, like why are we seeing these results with this type of thing? And what I really got looking at, I think what Dr. Axe says a lot too, is the collagen is critical. Like, we have to have it in order for our cells to form. We have to have all this collagen structured, and really, as American people, we don't eat a lot of collagen-based food. We just don't. But then on top of that, it's a big molecule, so it's not absorbed, and then it's not activated. And what I mean by that, nutritional food is good, but if you don't exercise, you're not going to build muscle. So exercise is activation to our body to build muscle, and nutrition is now being designed to work on genetic pathways to activate it. So the collagen itself has Truscience Liquid Collagen had what's called ruby red quinoa in it, which is an extract of a plant. And I'd love to hear your take on this, Dr. Nick, because your naturopathic background. It activates the genes in the fibroblasts to turn on the collagen production, right? Which is awesome. But then you have a hydrolyzed liquid collagen, so it's broken down in really small peptides or small Lego pieces, so you can absorb it. Right, and more people don't absorb stuff. Like, they don't break it down. We know people's guts struggle all the time with it absorbed because it's so small. And the other thing is you don't get an immune reaction. A lot of people eat foods and they feel heavy because their body can't digest, and they're like, ugh, right? They feel heavy because it's a small, little tiny particles, and it's activated. The body can absorb it, and it doesn't have an immune reaction to it. A lot of our autoimmune conditions are based on it's reacting to foods that are basically similar in the protein sequences to part of our body react to it. And as I started like hearing these testimonials come in, And I listened to these stories. I'm like, man, this is big. Like, because I knew collagen is important. And I knew we needed to have it. And most people don't eat enough proteins as it is. But I was never seeing results like I saw with this. And I mean, we're talking about some patients I treated for, decade and longer, like my wife especially, right? And so I have a brother that's a surgeon. I don't know if you guys have siblings that are kind of stubborn. Well, this guy, he's amazing, like amazing surgeon, but like he's a surgeon. And he's had a plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis. He's so stiff and tight, like I don't even like working on him. And he's losing a ton of hair, right? And so he was seeing these pictures I was posting of what we were seeing, weird people seeing people's hairlines changes, seeing like the stuff, seeing like Hashimoto eyelashes come back in, right? I was seeing this process take place. I knew it was working. And he saw me post a few things. He's like, I think I want to try that stuff. And I go, no. I said, I will not let you try it. I said, you can buy 6 months worth, and I'll even give you my commission back on it, because I just wanted him to take it long enough, right, to notice, to give his body the chance, right, to notice the difference. And within a couple of weeks, I call him, knowing like he's going to see some changes, right. He's like, man, that stuff works. I'm like, yeah, it works. It's so funny because now, I mean, he's been on it now by 6 months. He feels so different. And he's like, dude, I want to share that with my patients. So, well, all right. So yeah, just from the standpoint of what I've seen, clinically, been awesome. And I think that's kind of my check with things. Like, science is great. Like, and I love science. But if I read something in science and then like I don't see the clinical results, then it's out. And so seeing the results of that's really what got me looking heavy into science. And you start looking at like collagen and the amount we should be taking and having, if you're not absorbing, it's not really good. And all the autoimmune stuff that I have, I've watched a lot of autoimmune people improve because we're seeing gut healing from this stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And as I saw some of these like depression things happen, I'd watch some people with depression, anxieties change. Like, man, that's just weird. But doing what you and I both do with working with the energy, like for a cell to communicate, they have to communicate through electrical signals. They just do. And without water, right, you can't conduct electric signals. Like, you just cannot do it. So if you have electrolytes in water, you can't pass the current through anything, because the collagen molecule now is structured correctly. It pulls the water molecule. I truly believe that's why we're seeing some of the things we're seeing changes, not only in like the itises, right, but also the energy of like what people are feeling with like the mental side of things, because I now feel like the cells can communicate and can send that signal back and forth that you're supposed to, because a lot of people aren't hydrated anyway with what they drink. But on top of that, I've had a lot of people that drink a ton of water but don't ever feel hydrated. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact is now the collagen is there to maintain the water clusters to where we're seeing that fluidity that we need to feel. So so that's kind of just an overview. And now we have a couple of studies that come out. The original study showed that we got an increase of 40% increase in density of collagen, right, wow, from just like baseline, which is awesome. But because of the results we were seeing, it wasn't what the company that helped produce it was used to seeing. And it's because we also use a product called Protandim Nerve2, and this activates the Nerve2 pathway. So short answer, your body makes things to clean up the crap, antioxidants. One of the biggest one is known as glutathione. So glutathione, superoxide dismutase, and catalyze. Those are the three of the biggest like cleanup crews. Kind of like having mom and dad both work together, right, clean up the house. So all three of those. So the Protandim Nerve2 we know upregulates those things intracellular because it turned on the gene switches. And we were seeing people take these together. So we went back to the clinical study based on genes, and it upregulates the gene expression by 100% when you combine them. Wow. This is based on mRNA sequencing, but like the bottom line is like it's getting more from what you're already doing, right? And so, like I love exercise, but if I had the right exercise for me, I'd probably get more benefit. And with this, we're activating the genes, which we all have if you're a mammal, in the right way with the right induction and giving the right ingredients where you can absorb it. And it's all based on this gene activation and absorbability. And so for me, it's just been fun because now I'm seeing better clinical results, and my family's doing better. So I take it preventatively, but I actually feel a lot better from my exercise from it. And I have my youngest, even though he's 16, take it because he's an athlete and he's growing, right? And so like those guys are constantly beating their bodies up. At the same time, like I want to maximize his recovery time. And so I have people do it from just a preventative standpoint, and also from a business. I think I sent you a couple of videos. I've got some crazy stories of people with like disc stuff changing, and I got one guy that he's an older guy, but he actually regained inches. He regained
Oh,
an inch of
wow.
height. But the only way that can happen is if the collagen is changing his discs, right? And we watch that. People will sometimes also they'll go through a real collapse in height as they get older and dehydrated. But like I didn't expect that to happen on this guy, but I've seen it now several times with other people that I know.
And I believe it, man. The way I see the body globally with the matrix, like you're talking, and like the reason we're seeing so many different things is like you're saying, we're supporting that one system that touches every other system. So we're seeing brain stuff, we're seeing gut stuff, we're seeing joint stuff. I mean, you see the hair, skin, and nail stuff. I mean, like it's holding everything together. And if that system can't communicate and process, like the magic of what our innate intelligence does can't do what it's designed to do, right? Nick, go ahead, brother. I know you want to.
Yeah, I mean, a question that often patients ask is like, well, what's the correlate to nutrition? Like, what in nature looks something similar to this activated collagen? And maybe even if we can just break down the difference between what we're seeing in people buying huge amounts of collagen without these kind of benefits. But I think those two for people would be really interested.
It's actually a really cool question. I love the background of a naturopath too, because they think of plants and all this. Whereas a lot of us that study nutrition, we study like the ingredient versus like the plant itself.
Totally.
But I actually got thinking about that a lot as I was kind of looking at collagen and like really what are the main sources of collagen in people's diets? In the American population, like we don't like you can get some in bone broth, like boiling bones down, you get collagen. And that's where a lot of the sources come from. Like out there, they'll actually basically take from bone, basically skins, like skin of fish. Skin of fish has a lot of collagen in it. But like in our culture, like I'm gonna say our, but as far as my culture, like we didn't skin a fish. Like you just didn't do that. And rooster combs have a lot of collagen too. But like again, like unless you're from that Oriental area, like where they actually use this a lot in their cooking, their bone broths, and they boil it down, and the rooster combs and fish, like they cook the whole fish, right? And they eat the skin of fish. Like that's part of the problem. I just think one, we don't eat enough of those collagen-rich foods. And in order to break down, let's just say I did. Let's say I ate like bone broth or ate like rooster comb or ate skin of fish. The collagen is made up of proteins, and proteins are made up of what's called peptides, like little sequences. Okay. And so our digestive tracts, as you guys know this, but our people may not, is that they can only absorb like particles in small sizes to basically, otherwise you'll react to it. And so like there's called these peptides are small. If you're eating, let's say you eat fish. Some people eat skin of fish. Like I watched, like I'll eat the skin of salmon sometimes and trout. A lot of cultures do, like our culture doesn't typically. But to break that down, it's kind of rubbery, right? So you have to chew that, and your stomach has to digest it, and to break it down to small particles, and now it's absorbed through your intestinal tract and then reassembled somewhere else. So I think that's one of the factors that people aren't getting enough of just those basic structures. And then their digestive tracts are so damaged. Like I read a study just this last, 2 weeks, a week and a half ago. And the name of the book called Plant Paradox. But just talking about like the studies on what's called anti-inflammatories, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, Tylenol, Excedrin, ibuprofen, and just the damaging effect that it has on the intestinal lining as far as what it's like, just not obviously not feeling good, but also not performing well. And his study, he said up to 2 years sometimes it would take for the body to restore it back to its normal functioning. And I've heard year, but that was the longest I heard 2 years. And he also talked about the antibiotics. So I think part of that's the problem. And then I think, well, based upon what I've seen, because when I looked at peptides and a lot of the ones that are out there, they're big molecules and they're hard to break down. And they're not really like if you take a typical peptide that's a bone peptide, it's going to take a lot of water to like flush that sucker down. Whereas a liquid one, it's already in the state where it's in small peptides to break down. But then because it's got some vitamin C and then other root berry extracts, it protects the bonds. So if you don't protect those bonds, they'll change, and so now your body can't absorb them as well either, and they'll break down fat. That's probably when we get older. You take a smoker, you look at their skin. Like if someone that smokes, like you can see it in their skin because it dries out the tissues. And so if you're not getting enough antioxidants in, you're going to have some issues, right? So I think a lot of people have to factor that in. And most colleges, and I'd ask this question for a lot of them that take collagen or that you guys listen to this. A lot of them don't. They haven't heard this idea of activation, which is there are different foods that they aren't just good foods, but they literally turn on the right cell structures to do the right thing. So you can eat the bad foods and it tells the body to make bad things, right? You can eat the right things. We talk about broccoli for one. You eat broccoli, it's great. It's got fiber, it's got other nutrients in there, but it also I think that turns on gene switches that tells the body to make antioxidants like glutathione, right? And so the way we formulate, say we, the company I'm part of, is they look at the gene studies. And when we look at products, we look at, hey, what's the genes that need to be activated in order for the body to take a nutrient to turn on the right cell, part of the cell to do its job. On top of that, what are the right components that it needs in a way that it can utilize it? So in the diet, if people can eat ruby red quinoa, it's just not a very common food that most people eat, but that's the actual food that has this stuff in it that helps the body turn on the fibroblasts. And then if you want to start eating more collagen-rich foods, great idea to do. You'll probably have to learn how to like cook foods that you're not used to, because it's just not part of our culture. Like I've kind of tried to play with it. I'm working on it, like trying to, but like convincing my kids to eat the skin of fish, it's not going so well. Bone broth, I can sometimes get it in them if I hide it. But anyway, that's a couple of the things that I think is part of the challenge that we face. Because our culture is so used to instant. It just is like everything instant. And even if you do bone broth, instant bone broth, not the same as boiling it down yourself. It's just not the same nutrient value. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it totally does. And I always talk to patients whenever they're in let's say a crisis, that you've had such a degree of decline that you need therapeutic doses of certain nutrients. And that it goes well beyond just what a maintenance dietary intake looks like. There's a book I'm reading, really interesting, but it brought up a law that I wasn't aware of, and I may be mispronouncing it, but it sounded like something like Schringel's law, where it's something to do with, and I probably butchered the name, but in the audio book that I'm listening to, that's what it sounded like. I'll have to correct it. Maybe we can put it in the notes because I think it's worth looking into, and maybe this will help you remember. Maybe you know this law, but it's in reference to basically how plants need to grow. And if you say have all the core micronutrients there, but phosphorus is missing, the plant won't grow to the degree that it needs to. Or if all the nutrients are except for nitrogen. And I remember actually doing this experiment in college where we would sort of have these different soil samples and minusing or adding in certain nutrients, and you would see the speed at which, or the development of how many leaves or branches or whatever. But really the law speaks to the fact that if that nutrient is missing, nothing is going to work properly. And there's certain nutrients in our body that are absolutely essential. And we know that, collagen production definitely decelerates as we age, along with the hormones and many other things. And so I think of this law in situations like this, where we need therapeutic doses of certain pieces of our nutrition to actually, bring our head out of the clouds, so to speak, like you mentioned with the other patient, or get out of a state of inflammation. I mean, I know personally from my own body that, and I talked to David a ton about this, where like my recovery, I need way more attention on my recovery than I ever did, in my 20s and 30s. And this is definitely part of the story. So, yeah, I think the way that you explained it was really brilliant. And understanding, even in the intro, David, when you kind of spoke to part of your work, Brett, is to look at nutrition from a different point of view through this lens of activation. And maybe you could speak to that just in general a little bit more. Because I think that's really, really important. The world that we live in is definitely more complicated than it's ever been. Like you mentioned, like people on NSAIDs or other things that are causing degeneration or GI tract. There's lots of forces that are, against us in our healing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's actually good because it's funny, like, how things happen in life and it just kind of takes you down a different path. I think for me in genetics is when my mom passed away. My dad's a teacher. He's taught this type of healthcare for my whole life. And when my mom developed cancer and passed away, like we study everything anyway, but man, it just changed so much as far as how I looked at the world and, what do I need to look for? What didn't I know was there? And so I kind of went and started delving down the pathway of genetics pretty heavy then. And it's not my successes that drive me. It's what I would say my failures, the ones that didn't get better. And that was one of my paradigm shifts into this. So that really got me thinking about what you said. If there's something missing, right? And I think with formulas that most of us are used to studying and using, I'm just glad we have really smart people that can do that. But there's a lot of different things that have to go together to make them work. And most of the formulations out there are we read these research and they start combining things and then we test them clinically, like on patients. That's kind of what we do based on the science, because most studies are done based on, hey, this ingredient and this population did this. It's not very often you say, hey, we're going to combine these things in these particular ratios, and then we're going to see what happens with what's called gene expression. So so for instance, I like the analogy you said at the plants, right? So if we take phosphorus out or we take magnesium or manganese, hey, we don't produce as many leaves, or the bark's not as strong, right? Or the plant can't protect itself. I mean, it's just by a couple little things, but those little things that they're important for the whole. And so if you think about this term of activation, think of it like I have 4 children. And so each one of them are unique in of themselves, but each of them probably could have each one has a different capacity in what they can do if they have all that they need. Now, if you remove some of the things that they need, their capacity will not be 100%. Now, my goal is to help them to have as much capacity as possible for themselves in whatever that is they want to do. But if they don't have what they need, it's hard to reach that 100%. So your body right now is doing the best it can with what it's given. And if it's not getting everything it needs, it can't get to whatever your 100% is. And so when I worked with this little boy diagnosed with autism when he first came in to see me, and this is another one of my big shifts in my head. I'm sure this happened to you, Dr. Wardy, too. It's like people come to you because you help people that most people don't help. And this patient was sent to me with their son. They drove over an hour and 50 minutes each way to come see me every week for a year. Like, he was diagnosed with autism, struggled with verbally, just behavior was rough. Just a lot of problem with sensory integration. He just didn't integrate. They had to leave him at home while they went to Disneyland because he just couldn't handle the stimulus. Mostly nonverbal, a few words here and there. You just never know what you're going to get. And so we did what we do, like 6 steps to wellness. We did nutrition, we did the diet, we did the detox saunas, the foot baths, and IV therapy. We did all these different things, and he's making a little progress, enough to know he's different. Now he's realizing, man, I've got to go to all these 30 hours of therapy, and my brother doesn't. That's not right. And so he was realizing he was different, but I said, we just got to keep going. That we were doing everything that I knew at that time. And I remember him coming into his mom one time, and I worked on him and I worked on our mom. And she said he's starting to notice he's different. And it broke my heart. I'm thinking, man, what else can I do other than keep going? Right? Even though I'm studying and doing stuff and they're doing all sorts of stuff, the kid was doing 35 hours of therapy with occupational therapists, PTs. The mom and dad are pouring everything into this kid they possibly could, well over $150,000 they put into him, right? Trying to just help him. And most people ran out of time and money. These parents that think they just have the ability to do it. And then she found out about a product that's actually made by the same company that's called Axial, and it's a brain drink. And when I looked at the ingredients, at first she said, I'm going to get my kid this. And I look at it and I'm like, and it had one of them had caffeine in it. And I looked, the advertisement was like a healthy energy drink, right? And in my head, I told her, well, we're going to give a hyper 4-year-old an energy drink. That makes a lot of sense, right? But as soon as I said that, it came out of my mouth. I'm thinking, man, what do we give kids with ADD all the time? What does medicine give them? Well, it's all stimulants. I'm like, whatever. But I looked at the ingredients, and my thought was, well, it's just not that special. It looks good. It's got some things that look good. Well, he starts taking it. 11 days later, he comes into my office and he sat still. And for him, that's a big thing. I think he sat still on my table, let me work on him for 15 minutes. Normally it's I'm chasing around the office, and I had to put it from the TV. I asked him a question. The question was on point. He actually talked to me in multiple word sentence type. I'm like, that doesn't happen. Then he goes back in my back office and he does the therapies we ask him without having to be forced. And didn't have to put in front of the TV. I'm like, I don't get it. Like it's like one of those things where you like, this is a different kid because like we've been doing all the same stuff. I didn't change what I did therapy wise. It's also now his brain was learning. And I called his mom up and I said, look, I don't know what's happening, but there's something different about that. And that's when I started studying into, I looked up the Axio and I read the research on protanum nerve 2 that's on PubMed. There's a place called pubmed.gov. It's where, science, real good science is published. And I started realizing, wow, there's something different about how these products are made. And that's because when they were making it, they were testing gene expression. So they're testing the results of what happened in the cell, which most of us can't do. Like it's just an expensive process. So I watched that little guy, like basically he was tested like right before this, and he was kind of on the bottom of this class academically, like letters, numbers, socially, right? 6 months later, he's now the top of his class. And the only thing that's changed is that particular brain drink, known as a nootropic, basically a nutrition that changes brain function. And I'm like, if I hadn't seen it, I probably would have been like told somebody you're smoking something because it was such a drastic shift. And when I saw it, so going back to your question on the activation, is that's what happened to him. His cells had the capacity. It's just we didn't know how to activate the brain to where it was able to learn and then retain and then to recall. And so his day felt like a groundhog day. No matter how much you taught him the right stuff or had the right therapies, it's like the brain couldn't learn it. And that's where his frustration was coming from, is the fact that I truly think he is highly intelligent, but he was highly intelligent and just couldn't get it out. And so I think a lot of these people that struggle with that, like they're frustrated because they just can't get out what's in here. And so that drink was designed originally to address brain fatigue in athletes. That was kind of the goal, right? How do we take somebody that gives up mentally, which that's everybody, right? Whether it's an athlete, a mom, a dad, business person, whatever matter. Like we fatigue typically mentally before we fatigue physically. So I ask people all the time when they say that I'm tired, I say, well, are you tired physically or are you tired mentally? Because it's different. And now by doing that, I've watched, so many other people have that same response. So when I'm talking about activating people, I want to activate the cell. So the cell needs to have what the cell needs to have the performance function. And so with doing nutrition that's based around this idea of looking at actually what a cell takes to make sure it does the job is vastly different than just giving a vitamin A or vitamin C or vitamin D. And so I'd like to try to look for companies that take that concept of combinations, right, and working with that within that. And especially if we can have ones that are tested like on end result of genes. Now that's a new concept. A lot of companies, it's super expensive. So not a lot of companies do it yet. But I do think in the future we'll see more of that where, for instance, like the protanum nerve 2, Dr. Nick, like it's all plants. Like it's ashwagandha, bacopa, milk thistle, turmeric, stuff that you think, okay, well, this one's good for that one's good for this, that one's good for this. But they actually tested the level of what's called activation and the enzymes of what basically the end result, how much money you make, right, after the assembly line. And when they tested the herbs individually, it equaled a certain amount. But when they combined them in a very specific ratio, it was 18 times more. Right. Oh. So activation is kind of a lot of what I love when you worked on me, Dr. Worry. I loved it because what you were doing is like you were putting the pieces together to allow my body to communicate with supposed to, so it can perform the function it's designed to function. And I think a lot of nutraceutically, I think that's where it will go. It is going, and I truly think it's going to come from plants. It does. And if we can just find the right way to combine it in the right ratios and test it within this in this mammalian cell and see the result, we're not gonna guess near as much because we're gonna talk about, hey, if you could repair faster, would be a good idea? Yeah. If you could have your mitochondria function better, would that be good? Yeah. So what if you have better autophagy? Yeah. Well, then if we combine those things and we have a product that's designed to do it that way, we don't have to guess as much. And I love that. So the activation that's kind of the short answer of activation. Not really short, it's kind of long, but and I like it back to the muscle function. Like no matter how good you eat, if you want to build a big bicep, you have to lift. Like if you're going to build muscle, you have to load that muscle, and that load, the mechanical stimulus for a muscle is the activation piece. So you eat good, right? So we want to activate physically, right? So that's why I love the chiropractic side. You activate physically by what you do. You activate electrically with some of the work you do, Dr. Wordy, is getting the body connected, and you give that nutrition. Then we can have people have a much more full expression of life. And I think the sooner we do this, like I'm pretty sure you guys have seen this too, like that we're seeing younger and younger people have older person's diseases, right? And it has a lot to do with that the things that we're getting into our kids' life sooner are basically damaging them and the environmental pollution and everything else. So if we can start activating them at a much younger age and getting them working on it, I think you can have a generation that actually starts having more improvement than we even had.
Yeah, that was a great description. I just want to say one thing, David. Well,
No,
two
go ahead,
things,
brother. Go ahead.
if you don't mind.
Yeah.
When I first saw that product, when I saw the list of ingredients, I was like, that looks pretty basic. Not to everybody, but to me, I was like,
Oh yeah,
dude, I've seen these ingredients before.
yep.
So the question there is like, okay, well, what makes that particular blend in the way that they do it? Like,
Yep.
what allows for that activation? Is it just that they have those ones showing up together, or like?
Yeah, it's
You know?
crazy. Like okay, so I don't remember how many years ago, but somebody brought a bottle into me like years ago. I don't know how long ago it was, like, because they were mad at me, right? Like I told you about that,
Mhm.
you know. And actually, it was an MS patient I had, and she got really good on the product. But I looked at the ingredients. This is the time when my dad was formulating for another company, and I'm like, well, yeah, they look good. I mean, but they're not that special. Those are my exact words. Well, it looks okay, but it doesn't look that special.
My thoughts
Okay,
exactly. Yeah.
those are my words that came out of my mouth, right? Because like it just didn't look that special. Oh, yeah, milk does look good for liver, ashwagandha, right? That's how I viewed it because we're all taught to view this herb does that. Like that's just kind of how we were taught. But I had never had the ability to know how to test a product where you put a little of this, you put a little of this, put a little of this together, and it had a very different effect. For instance, the ingredients in a cookie and bread are actually very similar. Very similar, but the quantities of what ingredients and when you put it in and how much and for how long vastly changes the results. And so when it takes you take these very specific. So when you talk about milk dust or turmeric, all these that they're using, it's a very specific part of the plant in a very specific ratio, and they test that. So when they combine it, they have the same result. And that's why there were one of the clinical studies, not clinical, but a study was done by National Institutes of Health, which one of the subsidiaries, National Institute of Aging. They did a 10-year study on longevity with the proton nerve 2. It increased the lifespan in the animal population by 7%. It was the only dietary supplement to do that. Now, I don't think that would have happened if it wasn't done this way, because if you just took like a turmeric is not a turmeric, right? What that plant ate, right, to grow that turmeric determines how well that turmeric works. So with this Life Vantage, they actually test like the types of plants, where it's from, what they, how they make it. So when they combine it, it has that ratio. So that's actually the reality, and because they test the gene expression, so they test the end result. So if you have 5 assembly plants and they all make widgets, whatever they're making, the efficiency at which that system runs is how many products produced at the end. So what we're doing, we're testing the end result. We're testing, for instance, like collagen density. So you combine these things, but the end result is how much collagen can the fibroblast produce. Well, when you get a 40% increase in collagen density, then that plant, that assembly line is working correct. And all this, as we age, we lose collagen because our body's breaking it down faster than it's repairing it. Well, what if you could change that with what you give it? And so when the collagen specific, it activates the pathways, it replenishes it, and it helps some of the things in it help to maintain the breakdown. And so with the same, so that's the why, because I was exactly like, this just doesn't look that special. But when I saw the results, I saw a little boy. I went back and read all the studies. I'm like, I don't get it. But then I'm like, oh, that's why, because they actually were testing the end result. Like I can't do that. Like there's just no way. Like there's no, like I don't have the dollar amount nor the laboratory science to do it. Mm-hmm. But they were testing the results. So when they put the product together, they were playing with this and this. They actually tried to make that thing with the pharmaceutical, and they couldn't do it. Wow. Right. So it's just, and that. Wow. So I think hopefully as science progresses, there'll be more products made this way. There's a few people out there, like I think Dr. Harris, Dr. Wordy, I think he's smart enough, he can figure that sort of thing out. But like
Yeah.
most of us, right, his mind, right, but when you can test the RNA sequences, so basically that how much gene expression happens, you know that you're getting a more of a productive thing. But again, most companies, this isn't a conversation they're having. It's all based on research.
Wow. So the icing on the cake here that sort of hits this point home, I as you were speaking earlier, I was like, what the hell is the name of that law that I was trying to say? So it's called the law of the minimum. And so I'm gonna read this out a little bit.
Okay.
So in the 19th century, a German scientist named Justus von Liebig, how I got to Schigel or whatever I said, the Schigel law. I must have put Justus and Liebig together, but anyways,
we're gonna call it the law of Schigel.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I'm gonna remember it, Nick.
Your new nickname is Dr. Schigel.
Dr. Schigel, exactly. It's the law of the minimum. It's called the Liebig law. So they studied the interrelationship. This like hits the point home on what you're speaking to, or we just spoke to. Studied the interrelationship between nutrients and other factors that affect plant growth and yield. His law of the minimum, also known as Liebig's law, came to a surprising conclusion. Growth is not dictated by total resources available, but by the scarcest resource, which serves as a limiting factor. So to go back to that plant analogy, this means that if one of the essential nutrients required for plant growth is deficient, plant growth will suffer, even if all the other essential nutrients are widely available. So that speaks to synergy, which you just spoke to. It speaks to like having the right nutrients on board, and it speaks to activation. It's like it's the law of the minimum, man.
That's awesome. Dr. Schigel.
You brought it together, Dr. Schigel. That's awesome.
Dude, that's gonna stick. I'm sorry.
It is. It doesn't even Justice in Liebig turns into Schigel. So
that's way easier to remember.
Yeah, it is. David, go ahead, buddy.
No, so Brett, it's interesting, it was kind of the same story with me, right? I mean, I looked at what was in the Protandim and I'm like, I don't get it. Like, what is so special about this, right? But then when you sent me the research and I looked at it and I read about the genomic testing, I was just blown away. And then I thought, like, golly, like, there's probably not that many people doing it, like you said. And think of how many formulas people that are made for people, and we have no idea, like, we tweak something, maybe add something in, change that, and it could have be 10, 18 times stronger, right? But like you said, I'm excited because I think this is where medicine is going, and it's going to help mankind. Because if we can test things at the back end like that and understand what they're going to do for us and make the tweaks, we have more powerful medicine, right? And so that's exciting, and it's really exciting to see a company doing this.
Yeah.
It really is, because I mean, you think about all the companies out there that sell products, and it's like, how many of them can say that? There's not many, right? I mean,
I've asked that question. You don't even see it. Like, you're starting to hear the word, but you don't see the testing. But I understand why it's expensive.
yeah, I can imagine. But I mean, that's why we're getting the product, right? So I real quick, man, I got to tell you what's been happening with
I say you got to tell me what your story is.
Yeah, I have to. Okay, so when we got on it, you told me same thing. You told your brother, give me 6 months, okay? And I agree with you, right? I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Let's do it. So Brett told me you'll be able to tell a difference in 2 weeks, and I did. So after 2 weeks, just me and Clarissa, we noticed immediate change. And buddy, I didn't feel like I had many problems, right? So I felt better energy, more steady energy throughout the day, more clarity in the brain. My joints started feeling better. So I use my body all day. I'm on my feet all day, right? And so I have little bits, but nothing, no pain, but just stiffnesses here and there. All that started dissipating very quickly. Even better bowel function, man. Better motility was another big one for me. The biggest one as far as cosmetics, hair, skin, nails, man, is I was actually balding a little bit in the back of my head up here. Last year, maybe a year and a half ago, I started to notice my hair was thinning out. Was a little concerned. Wasn't really coming back. Changed my hair products. Was doing red light therapy, some other things. Wasn't really changing, man. As soon as I got on the collagen, man, my hair's coming back in. But not just the bald spot. Like, my whole head is getting thicker, and my hair is coming back in a lot better. So very happy about that. So I mean, in Clarissa, buddy, she had issues with her skin in the past year and a half, and we've had our troubles with that. She's doing better now, but her skin needed healing. She had lost a lot of her hair from the psoriasis eczema flares she had about a year ago. She lost 2/3 of her hair, buddy.
Wow.
So for Clarissa to get on this and to see the results that she's having, she says that her skin is healing. She's like, things that wouldn't heal before are healing crazy fast. Her hair is coming back really quickly, man. It's thickening, like it's filling out. Same with her energy. Joints felt better, right? So we both saw things, right? But we didn't feel like we had anything like major. Like me, the hair was probably the biggest thing I took it for, but then I saw these other benefits, right? So then the other person I got on it right away was my mom. My mom has a lot of stuff going on, man, from issues with her gut to energy to sleep. I mean, you name it, man. I mean, my poor mom has just been struggling. We've done a lot for her, and she kind of has ups and downs. But like a big thing for her that's always been on the docket is her motility of her gut. She's had a horrible constipation, and there's just like nothing budges it, man. Literally 3 days in on the collagen, she started going to the bathroom.
Wow.
And she has no issues going to the bathroom now. Like none. Like I asked her, I said, Mom, like you're just going like regular now? She's like, oh yeah, like I have no problems anymore. And I'm like blown away, buddy, because this has been like over a decade of her. Like she'll go for a little bit, then it'll stop and go, and like it's just been. Can you imagine? Like I always tell people, like that's something that like until you have a problem doing that, we don't think
Right.
about it. But man, I'm not being able to go to the bathroom and always feeling constipated. It's gotta suck. So, buddy, gut, massive changes.
Yeah.
Her joints, man, she has a lot of joint pain. She saw changes in her joint pain. Another big thing for my mom outside of the gut is even her headspace, man. My dad actually picked up on this, and so did I. She was just happier, man. Like I just saw like a different person there after about 2 to 3 weeks on the collagen and the protein. So,
Wow.
buddy, I was blown away. I mean, my mom, of all people, she's one of those people that we call like, we call them the real sensitive ones to medicine, right? So anything I give her, I'm always just like, she's probably gonna have the opposite effect. But buddy, on this stuff, it was a home run for her, man. Like
That's awesome.
huge.
She's a canary in the coal mine, huh?
Yes, she is the canary in the coal mine, man. Another patient, chronic hip pain, okay, for over a decade, just constant when he sleeps, when he's moving throughout the day. 2 weeks into the collagen, he says, I don't have pain in my hips anymore. Like when I sleep and things like that, he's like, I'm not having the hip pain that I'm used to. And another patient, she's bone on bone in her knees, she doesn't want to have surgery. She's been with us for years. She does really good. She still plays tennis, all these things, but like they told her she needs double knee replacement. So I told her, I said, look, let's try it. Give me 6 months. I'm not saying it's going to grow anything back on the knees, but maybe we can get your pain scale down in your joints and you feel better. 2 weeks in, buddy, she's like, I'm sleeping without pain in my knees. I can get up and down the stairs with very little pain. Before I could barely get up the stairs. So she saw big changes. I have a couple people, brain fog was a big problem. It's cleared up the brain, man. Like immediately almost when they got it, they're just like, man, I'm just clear. Like I don't know how to explain it. So buddy, just like left and right? And so it's really neat to see that you have a tool like this available when people are suffering and they really just need help. And I have that in my arsenal now, man. And before it's kind of like we had it, but it's like we didn't have faith in it kind of deal. And it's nice to have a couple products that I can sit there and say, okay, I know if I give them to this, that they're going to see changes and we're going to see them starting to move in the right direction. So yeah, it's been great, man. And I think, when did I get on it? Like maybe 4 months ago?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we're 4 months in, man, and I'm already seeing awesome changes. Like I'm still on it, and then all these people that were getting on it, they're loving it, man. So
It makes me so happy to hear that, especially with your wife. And that's what's always amazed me. I think partially why one of the reasons I stay doing this business too is like there are people I know and love and care about, and they have struggles you don't know about, right? And just somehow, some way, I think God had a way to bring us all back together. It's just like to have your wife struggle with that for years and for that long time, and just like that psoriasis stuff and that the hair loss, and to have it come back in is like just that makes me so happy.
oh, man, life changing.
So fun.
Sure. Yeah, life changing. So man, I can't thank you enough. And again,
Welcome.
the universe works in mysterious ways, man. It's just kind of like I was looking into stuff. I ran over your stuff, and I was just like blown away, man. But I mean, you told me, man, and that's the thing. I trust you, brother. So when you told me like just try it, it's gonna do what it needs to do, and we did, man. And like I pretty much tell everybody the same thing. Just give me 6 months on this stuff, and we're gonna see some changes. So
That's awesome. I appreciate you telling me
man.
that. I didn't know all that, but that's awesome.
Oh, it's been great, man. I can't wait to just share it with more people, and then that's honestly where we're at now with it.
And you guys are doing great things. Yeah, not Morty, Dr. Nick. Like I love it. Like I love what you guys are doing. Getting this message out to people, and you guys sound a little like sometimes. You guys have been doing this a while.
We've guilty. We've
So
been
I think we're on our third year, right? We're in our
something like
third
that.
year?
Yeah.
Our third year.
Yeah. There've been a little fewer and further between, but yeah,
We're still going.
we're still going.
Well, that's good. You can have north of the border and south of the border talk to each other. That's good.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's amazing. I wish I had a story as well. I mean, David, last time we gratefully were able to connect again after since the lockdown, and David was telling me about the stories of how he was using it, and that we were wanting to get you on to talk more about it. So I look forward to connecting with you again, Brett, and sharing our stories of what I've noticed as well. So yeah, I appreciate you being here.
Did you start on the collagen?
I haven't started yet. David.
So check this out.
David told me to, and
It just launched. It just launched in Canada.
Oh, it just launched in Canada. Okay,
just this month that we could get it up there, but now it's officially in Canada. I'll be in Canada, Edmonton, in the first weekend of March.
Cool. Oh, that's awesome.
So now I'm glad to have some good friends up in Canada. It was hard. We had to kind of get it through a different site to get it over there, and it was a pain to get there. Now, I mean, Canada's tough. It
is. It's really, it's more tough now. Just there's new laws or a new one that just got passed.
So it's tough. So the good thing is they've done the work to get it in the right, so it won't be an issue.
Yeah.
So
good. Well, yeah, I know that was part of the speed bump. Actually, it's just there was some restriction there. Yeah.
Canada just takes time.
Yeah.
But you guys
are a little slower up here.
I don't know what it is. It's just Canada. Maybe it's just icy roads. I don't know.
That's probably a big part of it. Yeah.
Maybe they need to learn about that new law you created. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's part of it, I'm sure.
So Brett, where can people find out more info about the Protandim, the Truscience Collagen, and then even your stuff, man? Like if people want to look you up, learn more about you, tell us where they can find you.
Yeah,
man.
For sure. Yeah, I mean they can always find me. I mean, I just type in Dr. Brett online. You're going to find me through YouTube and stuff like that. But if you have questions on the collagen, just reach out to you too. You can get it to him as well, or Dr. Nick. But if you want to, I mean, you can find me. I'm drbrimhall.com. That's kind of where I'm at. That's probably the easiest way to find me. My office, Brimhall Wellness Center, you'll find me there too. I see patients a couple days a week, but I do a lot of this type of thing, just trying to get people help other practices have more success in patients.
And so for my listeners, Brett does everything I do and a whole lot more, and he's in Arizona. So if you're searching out for a doc that does similar things to what I do, he's your man. He's there for you.
Vice versa. If you're in El Paso, go see Dr. Wardy.
And I'll attach all your stuff I'll attach all your stuff in the show notes as well, brother. Brett, thank you so much, man. This was awesome.
Thanks, Brett.
Appreciate you, blessed and grateful, and thank you for your wisdom, man, and your knowledge and all that stuff.
You guys are great. Thank you.
All right, guys. We'll
see you
on the next one.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please be sure to subscribe to the Dr. Dads and share with your family and friends. You can also follow and interact with Dr. Nick and Dr. David on Facebook and Instagram for a daily dose of inspiration and the latest in health and wellness. Be well.